Welcome to the Courting Happiness podcast. This is a space where self-care becomes part of your day. A space where you learn evidence-based strategies to help your life, share it with those you love, and cultivate well-being at work. I'm your host, Dr. Kortni Alston. I'm a former news director, television reporter turned happiness scholar, TEDx speaker, and transformational trainer. I also understand hardships. While working my dream job in television, I lived a nightmare suddenly becoming a young widow after 86 days of marriage. I became committed to learning more about resilience, healing, and happiness. This is how I discovered my area of research, which is positive psychology. Now I'm living my calling of training individuals and organizations on happiness. And my new chapter begins with being happily engaged. The Courting and Courting Happiness is about a true courtship. I like to say commitment with happiness. The K in courting stands for the vulnerability of sharing my story, inspirational interviews with phenomenal people, the infusion of positive psychology, and so much more. You'll learn how to commit to your well-being one episode at a time. I hope you subscribe and share. So, are you ready? Let's get started. Welcome to episode 105. I'm Dr. Kortni Alston. I am so happy that you're here. So, I have a question for you. Have you heard of TGIF? You heard of that saying, TGIF, thank God it's Friday? Well, it has become the phrase used to discuss the work week ending, right? And also a time to dive in to the weekend. But I want to share something that maybe you heard of or maybe not. And that is TGIM. TGIM. Have you heard of it? Well, it's thank God it's Monday. Yes, thank God it's Monday. And it's all about celebrating the start of the work week. Never heard of it? Well, my thoughts are that after this podcast, and then also after learning more about how you can incorporate positive psychology at work, you may start saying that yourself in terms of TGIM. Well, Brad Desmond talks about it in his article in Positive Psychology Today. Positivepsychology.com. And the article is titled Positive Psychology in the Workplace. Thank God it's Monday. And so in order to create or cultivate this dynamic, Desmond mentions the Perma Model. And Perma in the workplace stands for positive emotions, engagement, relationships, meaning, and accomplishments. And I've talked about it in the past, in past episodes of this model cultivated by one of the founders of positive psychology, Dr. Martin Seligman. I love so much what Brad Desmond mentions in his article, because I think it's so important to really dive in even deeper in regards to the value of PERMA. So let's talk about it. First, let's talk about the P in PERMA, positive emotions. Now, you can increase positive emotions in your workday by thinking about adopting some innovative approaches that, of course, are fueled by positive psychology. And so Desmond mentions some examples, and one of them is by listing appreciations. So as a standing agenda item at the beginning of staff meetings. So individuals can nominate someone or something for which they are grateful. I love this example. For one thing, any of you who are new to the podcast, welcome. For those of you who know so many elements of courting happiness, you know this, but I want to share it with individuals that might be listening to the podcast for the first time. One of my favorite things happens to be gratitude. It's actually one of my character strengths. And so I love the idea of utilizing and leveraging a culture of gratitude. And so Desmond also mentions that it can decrease stress levels because there's science behind this by pausing the rush reality of work and pausing to give thanks. Pausing to give thanks. So, an example of shout out or gratitude, you could start the meeting, could be simple. He mentions three elements. So, here are some of the examples that he shared. He says this that my appreciation is for Sarah. Last week, she stayed back to show me how to complete my spreadsheets. And since then, I've been finishing on time. That's a really good example. Another great example is I want to thank Jacob yesterday for helping me debrief a presentation, even though it wasn't his team's task to review it with me. Another great example. Here's another powerful example to think about. Huge thanks to the kitchen staff and catering company that provided delicious food last week to our event. Another great example. It all showcases all these different examples that we can have in the workplace. And it's so powerful to be able to share that during meetings. And I think it's wonderful that he mentioned making it a standing agenda item. So if you're thinking about your next agenda for your meeting, this is something that you may want to incorporate. So let's check out the next. Let's talk about connection. So relationships are integral to our well-being. I often share this in training sessions when talking about workplace well-being. But I also love what this article says in showcasing how it can do just that. So Desmond mentions a recent survey by Virgin that stated that about 40% of respondents named their colleagues as a top reason they enjoyed their job. Over 2/3 of respondents reported that not only did those positive relationships increase their productivity, but it helped them mitigate stress and difficulties in terms of challenges at work. So he mentions make an extra effort to eat lunch in, he says the canteen. I say, yes, the canteen, or it can be maybe a place not too far from the office. I am a professor and department chair, and so I often have been really, really grateful and lucky to work for so many different universities where there's food services not too far away, could be on campus or even off. He also mentions this, or organize a get together with your colleagues after work and get to know the people you're spending time with. Get to know the people you are spending, and he mentions so much time with, right? Because we spend a lot of time at work. So I'm a new chair at a beautiful Christian university in North Carolina. I love it there. I've been a part of the university now for, I guess, maybe 2 months or so. And yesterday we had a fair, and it was to help students who are undeclared explore options for their majors and maybe what they may want to minor in. So one of the things I will say, of course, I love meeting the students and being and really connecting with so many of them and getting to know them because I'm brand new. So this fair was my first fair here at the university, and it's certainly many cases my first opportunities, right, in terms of these initial meetings that I'm having with students. But before students walked into the room, before the event actually started, I have to share this. I felt embraced by my new coworkers. So many of them greeted me with smiles, hugs, and warmth. Did I mention I've only been working there since not even 2 months? It's wonderful. And so just to let you know how the event looked, and it was in our library on campus, and there were different tables representing different departments. And there you would find like marketing materials and different swag from the university specific to that department, and members of the department, right? Like faculty, administration, and staff. So we did have some downtime when students weren't in the space. And I remember looking around, just looking around the room and seeing my coworkers talking, smiling, fully engaged. And at my table, of course, it was the same energy. But what felt even more amazing is that it was my table. and, and I had an opportunity to talk and laugh and smile a lot with my new coworkers in my department. I learned more about them, their families, their interests, their strengths at the university, as well as sharing my own, more about me, my family, my interest, and more. I had the time of my life. I really enjoyed getting to know the members of my department more and getting to know all the different members of other departments at the university. I remember actually leaning over and sharing with one coworker, like, wow, I'm really enjoying getting to know everyone here. And so one of the things that resonates with me in terms of my new department and university is seeing so many people love working together. A big part of that, I believe, is being seen, getting to know each other, and valuing one another's strengths. And I will say, I have really been enjoying seeing my new university home do that so well. And so understanding the value in terms of working together, but getting to know each other and really valuing one another's strengths. I say it and I say it often. It's really a superpower. So here's another element or pillar, you can say, as it relates to PERMA. This one is all about meaning. So organizational psychologist and author Dr. Adam Grant, Desmond talks about Dr. Grant and how he devised an innovative experiment as it relates to team productivity. I really treasure all things Dr. Grant. I was first introduced to him in my PhD program by my dissertation mentor and mentor in regards to positive psychology, and really immerse myself in levels of Dr. Grant's work. He is a 3-time New York Times bestselling, author, and really does this great job in terms of shaping organizations around the world. He also has a great podcast, if you hadn't had a chance to listen to it, called Work Life. And I believe it's produced by TED, the people that give us all those great TED Talks. So he's really phenomenal in terms of learning more about organizations and organizational behavior. He's also really great as it relates to meaning. And one of my mentors, the one I just mentioned, his area happens to be, he's one of the leading scholars in meaningful work. And so what I love so much about what Dr. Grant, this experiment that's shared in the article, is it talks about how, like, one example of creating meaning at work and how Dr. Grant explains his work with call center staff, and the call center staff were employed to kind of canvass donations for university scholarship funds. And so Dr. Grant arranged for the staff to meet with their actual beneficiary of a scholarship, or of that scholarship. Apparently that meeting was only 5 minutes. 5 minutes, just 5 minutes long. And it was just enough time to ask some questions, but really also put a face to the name, right? So this team went on to raise, you ready for it? 3 times more money and record record in terms of record numbers, and consistently recording consistently longer and more engaged conversations with potential donors compares to the control group. So when people see how their efforts have a genuine impact, Desmond mentions, on their lives of others, even mundane work becomes more rewarding. I love that, because I think it's so important in regards to putting a face to a name. There's nothing like meeting an individual, Before I became a happiness scholar, I worked as a television reporter in various markets. Actually, much of my career is working as a broadcast journalist. Every time I would meet individuals, it was great in terms of putting a face to the story, really increasing the understanding of either an event and then also being able to share that narrative. So I love this example in terms of the importance and the value of meaning. So here we have our last but not least, and it's accomplish. So as I mentioned, I'm a new chair at a university, and I've implemented something that I really value in terms of my department meetings. And I've shared this with our initial meeting and shared with the team that I will be starting off all our department meetings this way. And it's with a strength-based question. It can be from sharing something that maybe we're proud of to even gratitude. And so I love doing this. And the reason why I love doing this is it allows me to get to know members of my team even more. And I want to know their strengths. I want to know the strengths of the amazing faculty that makes up the department. I want to know the strengths of all the people around me that I work with and that I'm so grateful to be working with. And so I think it's so important to understand the real, true dynamics, the strengths of the people that you are working with. And so this is one of the things that I've implemented, starting off the meeting with a strength-based question. I love Desmond's article because it really reiterates the value of doing this. And he mentions this approach and shares this. He says that leaders can build achievement in their people by involving a person's strengths in future discussions about organizational goals. He also adds this. For example, asking strength-based questions can help staff feel respected and valued. So Desmond mentions these questions to include. He says, tell me about a previous achievement of which you were genuinely proud. It may or may not be at work or work-related. A time when you really outdid yourself. Then he has another dynamic. He says, which top strengths do you think helped you achieve this impressive outcome? Which talents did you demonstrate at the time? And he also shares in brackets how VIA is useful. VIA is values in action, and it's all dealing with our character strengths. And I've actually have a past episode talking about character strengths. And I love that he's really focusing in on understanding the really leveraging and showcasing the strengths of character. So he also adds, coaching your staff can be as simple as taking an interest in their strength and exploring more ways to apply them towards agreed goals or professional development challenges. It helps build trust between you and your employees. And he says, promotes a collaborative culture of sharing experiences and learning. Love this. Wow. Lots of great tools to empower your team, right? Also to empower your team and you that will have everyone saying, thank God it's Monday. You can read more about this incredible article by visiting drcourtneyalston.com/podcast/episode 105. Thank you so much for listening. I am so grateful to be able to share this information with you. Remember this, your well-being is your most important job, and I'm always here to help. Have a wonderful day. Let's continue this conversation online. Email email us at podcast@drkortnialston.com. That's podcast@drkortnialston.com. Join us on Instagram at Courting Happiness. Don't forget, that's courting with a K. Also, I hope you join our private Facebook community. You can find us at Courting Happiness Podcast Community. Our private Facebook group is a safe haven to share, meet more people looking to build positive relationships, focus on well-being, and create a happier life. Now, are you ready to spread happiness? We hope you subscribe and share this podcast with your family, friends, coworkers, and all the important people in your world. We release a new episode every Thursday. Congratulations on your continued commitment to your courting happiness journey. Thank you so much for listening. We want you to be well, be happier, and be kinder to yourself. We can't wait to see you next week.